World leaders are set to meet in Egypt on Monday for the annual United Nations Climate Summit. This year's conference will gather representatives from nearly 200 countries and comes after nearly a year of climate-related disasters and rising temperature records around the world. Last year's COP27 in Glasgow saw governments promise to reduce carbon pollution, but emissions are still on the rise. Officials say this year's meeting will focus on implementing policies to reduce emissions and support existing climate financing commitments. Robert Nagila reports.
In West Africa, more than 600 people have died following what has been described as the worst flooding in a decade in Nigeria. In the Horn of Africa, at least 36 million people are in urgent need of assistance due to a devastating drought affecting several countries. And in Southern Africa, Mozambique has been hit by at least 3 tropical storms in the past 14 months, causing massive flooding, destruction and loss of lives. These are just some of the calamities witnessed in Africa in the past year due to events experts say are linked to climate change. Ahead of the 27th Conference of Parties or COP27 summit taking place in Egypt's Sharm el-Sheikh, at least 154 countries, climate change organizations and members of the civil society gather to discuss the impacts of climate change, take stock of progress made since the last summit and set new targets to tackle climate change. Africa contributes about 3% of global greenhouse gas emissions globally, but is the most vulnerable region. The UN says this vulnerability is driven by prevailing low socio-economic growth on the continent. Climate experts say at this year's summit, Africa will be pushing for, among other things, the establishment of a financing mechanism to compensate people for destruction caused by climate change-related events, financing for adaptation to climate change and mitigation measures leading to the reduction of greenhouse emissions globally. The continent's transition from fossil fuels to clean energy will also form part of the agenda.
Major polluters are developed countries and they have historical responsibility, but everybody has to contribute to address climate change.
There is also the issue of unfulfilled pledges from COP26, where developed countries promised $100 billion in funding to help developing nations combat climate change.
It was supposed to be made by 2020. That time has elapsed. As of now, it's not yet met, but there is a promise to meet it by 2023.
Tadege says the continent's position is developed through contributions from the civil society, a heads of state committee on climate change from the African Union, and a technical ministerial team from the AU and partners. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.